I am Professor Nitish Singh. I'm also a scholar member at Center for Sustainability and Director Program Innovations at Business School. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the first session, which is on sustainable disaster recovery and how businesses play an important role in this. Businesses and entrepreneurial vision can make a whole lot of difference in how it collaborates with the community at large to help communities and society in general to cope up with disaster recovery. And this session actually explores this aspect through two corporations, the BTI initiatives and the initiatives from General Motors. And thus, we have two great speakers here. And our first speaker is Michael Estes. He is Vice President of BTI Corporation. And he's going to share some of the initiatives they are taking at BTI and how they have got this long-term planning involved regarding how they can contribute to sustainability and disaster recovery. And then we have Rob Threlkeld, and Rob is going to talk about from the GM perspective and as to what broad initiatives has GM taken to enhance their efforts towards sustainability and disaster recovery in specific. So we will have first Mike Estes, who's the Vice President of BTI, and then we will have Rob Threlkeld, who is a Global Manager, Renewable Energy at General Motors. So first, please welcome Mike Estes.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out this morning. We got Mike Estes, BTI Greensburg, and then Rob, GM Detroit. So I think it doesn't matter how big or small you are, you can talk sustainability. And today I'm glad to be up here and basically talk about what's happened in Greensburg and what's happened to us. We've heard, and in your program there, you have people, planet, and profit in our whole plenary intro. And I think Mike Smith said it best: to be truly sustainable, you need to be a viable business or have viable businesses and an economic tax base to draw from. You won't be sustainable without it. My brother Kelly, we're a fourth generation John Deere store in southwest Kansas. So we're not hugely big, but after the tornado in '07, my brother Kelly and I, and a gentleman named Scott Brown in the back, who some of you have heard from, were eating at a restaurant, local restaurant that wasn't destroyed in Mullinville, Kansas, 3 days after the tornado, and we got to talking about all the businesses that were going to leave Greensburg. And that was extremely alarming because we all knew without businesses we weren't going to have a town and we couldn't come back as strong as we needed to come back. So we embarked on a Greensburg redevelopment meetings. We had those. Kim back there met with us, Kim Gamble, for months, I think 18 months, and brought in all kinds of resources. And a lot of the people, Chuck Banks and others that are sitting in this room today, were in those meetings helping us rebuild. This morning I'd like to thank SLU for hosting this conference. Daniel Wallach, where's he at? That poor guy, he's not here. I'm going to get him. Catherine Hart, really, we appreciate you inviting us to be a part of this. They're very dear friends, and Greentown helped BTI pull off a very successful grand opening 2 years after the tornado. We rebuilt this LEED Platinum store I'm going to tell you about in a few seconds. In the midst of everything, we kind of kept our sense of humor, didn't we? Kind of did that. Daniel always calls, I don't know if you heard him yesterday, but he kept saying pioneers. We were pioneers in Greensburg. I don't know about you, but my picture of a pioneer is a guy laying face down in the dirt with arrows in his back. So that's my definition of a pioneer. And I can tell you, when you do what we did in Greensburg, we got arrows. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to get shot at. Things are going to happen. Just be prepared for it and keep your sense of humor and get through it. Diana, thank you for having us here. By the way, speaking of your name, there was a Diana Carlin from Buckland, my little hometown. She was a cheerleader. She was from Kansas. She was nice and short and cute, and no relation there, right? Okay. Well, she was my best friend's sister, so that was a no-go. So, but I really like your name, Diana Carlin. I like that name. So this morning, I'm going to kind of give you an overview of who we are, BTI, what we did in Greensburg, and when I say we, I don't just mean BTI. I'm going to talk about the town and the other businesses in Greensburg as well, and what Harvest the Wind Network is, and the opportunities that can come out of something. These are our locations: Buckland, Greensburg, Ness City, and Pratt, if you're familiar with Southwest Kansas. History of BTI, this kind of shows you we're a fourth generation John Deere dealership. Started in '44 by my grandpa Ralph, who's up in that left-hand corner driving that tractor. My dad took over in '60 after grandfather passed away. '07 was a tornado, and you can see a few of our combines that are sitting there totally destroyed. We built a new store and opened it in '08 or in '09, and then in we also, that guy in the right-hand bottom corner is the governor of the state of Kansas, Parkinson, at the time. So, but like I said, I do want to talk more about what everybody else did in Greensburg. I think my dad and my grandpa, when they see what we've done over the last several decades, would be looking down saying, what the heck are you guys smoking down there? Because we have invested a lot of different time and energy in things, but we feel like we're making some headway. As far as some other prominent businesses, I just wanted to point out, we decided to rebuild 3 days after the tornado, but Scott Brown, man, he's a great entrepreneur himself. He built the mall on Main Street. He's a local farmer auctioneer. He's got a new business venture. I can't say enough about him, but I do tend to be a little bit like Scott. You never know what's going to come out of my mouth next, so be prepared, Scott. You never know. He's an auctioneer, so that's Jean and Jan West here, right over here. He was the commissioner of Greensburg, and she's been heavily involved in the media center. It's a beautiful media center in the Commons. She's taking some video now. She did a TV ad for our company with two gorgeous Miss Kansas girls in our foyer. And no, we weren't using sex to sell tractors, Daniel. That wasn't the gist of this commercial. But it came off very good, and Jan and her team did a great job. So, like I said, we've had a really good ride in Greensburg. You've seen this slide. Steve showed it yesterday. Our store is up in that left-hand top corner, and you can see some combines sitting in a row. You can see machinery over on the lot. That was us. We're about a 44,000 square foot facility. That's us destroyed up in that top left-hand corner. The reason a lot of photographers didn't get up there, some of them did, was because we were on the far western edge of the city, and a lot of them came in from the east and the south. So a lot of people didn't get the pictures of what it was. This is the store that we had, and it was a beautiful facility. This is what was left of it after the tornado. And as you can see, there isn't a whole lot. We had about 44 combines destroyed. They're 35,000 pounds, and they were rolled across those lots like toys. 25 to 30 tractors. There's about 70 platforms and headers. We had a ton of machinery on that lot. But we did stand in the entry there, that destroyed walkway, and talk to, everybody kind of has their story about how did green happen in Greensburg. Well, one of our stories is G.W. Bush was standing in that foyer with us, as was Governor Sebelius, as was Pat Roberts. Every entourage you can think of in the state of Kansas was there. And we started talking about things like wind turbines. We started talking about biofuels. We started talking about how we're going to get this city back. And I think Governor Sebelius mentioned that wouldn't it be neat to build Greensburg green? And for me, that kind of clicked in my head. And we were walking with GW all around that lot, and I can remember he was right ahead of me, and I was walking right behind him, and we were stepping over debris, and I thought, if he trips, I am dead, because I would naturally catch him. And there were snipers in all of our combines, all right? And I knew they would shoot me if I touched this man, so I was scared to death walking behind him. Mike Smith's comment about survive, revive, and prosper, I did kid him a little bit. I was wondering if he was going to pay me for that picture of my store that he had up there. And he said, well, I thought that was public property. I said, for you, it is. That's fine. We had all this worldwide coverage, and I really believe That's what helped Greensburg. It really did. Danny Forrester from Build It Bigger. Anybody ever see that series, Build It Bigger? He came and did a Build It Greener, and he had 3 or 4 series. One of them was he did a series on us building our store from the ground up. So he would keep coming back in typical Hollywood style. You had to wear the same clothes when he came back 3 months later or whatever, Kind of looked like this was happening in real time when it really wasn't. So we learned a lot of Hollywood tricks. But we all knew one thing: keep these guys around as long as you can, because someday there's going to be another disaster. And guess what? Joplin happened. Other disasters have happened. So when you have the media, use those folks to the best of your ability, because they can help you. Sustainable rebuilding. Well, we decided to rebuild BTI management. And by the way, I've got 2 other brothers and a sister that are involved as a trust, so we're the ownership group. We decided to build back to a LEED Platinum standard, which is the highest standard. And really, the reason for that was we didn't have to. The city didn't require anybody to, unlike some people thought. There was no requirements. But we felt like we needed to support what the city was doing. And we needed to show other businesses they could do the same thing. So that's really why we did it. But in the outset, we found out we saved money. Because when you build this way, your energy costs are substantially lower. So it's not just, it was for the community, but it ended up helping us. Here's a few things I'll show you, just going to roll through this quickly, but we have solar tubes in the showroom. And those solar tubes are just a skylight, and that's not so unusual, but it does have daylighting built into it. A company called WattStopper makes a product that automatically dims and lowers your lights when you get more daylight. So I'm saving a lot on electricity just by that one feature alone. So these kind of things are something you have to think about when you're rebuilding your building. Man, when I saw this picture, I said, gee, I got to lose weight, So pay no attention to the man behind the sweater vest, all right? That's kind of me, but, I'm a slimmer me now, okay? It's like I'm a blimp there. But anyway, this was a unique thing. There's a few of them in Greensburg now, but it's called a dashboard. It's a green touch screen, so you can just go up and touch this screen, and it'll give you a guided tour of our facility. It'll bring up our LEED scorecard. It'll, what else do I have on there? Donor lists, because we had a lot of people donate to us. It'll monitor my systems, my electrical systems, and all of my other systems, so I can see charts and graphs of what's going on. We got a lot of LEED points, and that's the LEED plaque in the background hanging there. So, like I said, don't pay attention to the guy there. John Deere helped with LEEDs also. That's John Deere Leaping Deer sign you see up there. Used to be fluorescents. They put in LEDs for us. So they were helping us get there as much as they can. And they really supported us in going our platinum level. They really, really did. We used a lot of regional recycled materials. You can see skylights that we put into the shop and the back parts area. That's day lit as well. So the brighter it gets in there, the dimmer the lights go. So you see a warehouse back here, outhouse. See that over there, Daniel? Are you familiar with that toilet? Huh? Yeah, Daniel Wallach supplied those Coroma toilets. He was called Lord of the Toilets for a while. I think, he supplied the entire community with these these were Australian, right? Dual flush jobbies, and they do work. I was a little worried about this, but they do work. We also put a California company makes a microfor toilet that's electric, so that's a weird experience if you try. That's kind of a boat thing or something. But but it saves. This building was designed for a 50% less usage of water and 50% less usage of energy. So we're now doing better than that, because since then we've put up a larger wind turbines. We put up an additional 50 kilowatt, and that gets us almost to net zero on our building. When we were putting up these turbines and some of the things that we were looking at, we wanted to fix our energy costs if we could for about 20 years, create a positive IRR, and basically just help us get to that LEED platinum level. And we had to save energy to get there. NREL back there, you back there, Mary? Yeah. They helped us a lot because they modeled this building for us. Shanti Pless did a great job. In Greensburg, we have a super wind source. It's 14 mile per hour average. And we're about this, I think we're the second windiest state according to most records. So wind works. And this is one of the situations where you can directly connect the turbine, I think most of you know this, to our facility. When the wind's not blowing, we're paying 14.8 cents, but when it's blowing, we're paying 7.3. So we're saving a lot of energy just using wind. Why do owners like the hospital in Greensburg and others choose wind? Well, they want to have some economic benefits, they want to have environmental benefits, and they want social benefits. I mean, you can kind of, it seems like common sense, but you don't know what's flipping somebody's trigger till you get in there. Wind works where you have these categories coming together. You have to have a good wind resource, you have to have a good or a high retail energy cost, and you have to have policy and incentives. The city of Greensburg passed net billing. That helped us immensely. So the city was incredibly helpful. We've since put up, and you can kind of see them in the background, we have 8 wind turbines on this site. So it looks like a little mini wind farm at our store. But those are little 5 kilowatts, and when you combine those with that 50, I'm getting close to 0. So that's pretty nice. Well, all this stuff, and just briefly I'll tell you, it led to a bigger vision. We said, hey, this works for us. Let's see if we can make it work for somebody else. So we created Harvest the Wind Network, and we looked at the wind resources across the nation, and we set up a regional network of dealers that work through us in Little Greensburg, Kansas, all right? And these dealers, a lot of them were John Deere dealers because they're stable, they've been there for years. The reason distributed wind had problems is they were being sold by fly-by-night outfits that couldn't service them once they put them up. They died, nobody could fix them. So it made sense to use John Deere dealers as much as possible. We do have others as well in that network. It's basically 4 pillars. We got to have local support from the local sales staff. Brad, my nephew, is our local BTI sales rep, and he does an excellent job. Not just because he's my nephew, he just does a good job. And so you got to have local support to make this work. You got to have the best products in the country, or actually, I would tell you, the world, if you're going to try to do this. We have 4. Endurance is a Canadian-based company that basically makes our 50 kilowatt units that we put up. And that's what you see in Greensburg a lot. We have Northern that makes a Northwind 100, so 100 kilowatt. We have a Gamesa that's an 850 kilowatt. And then we have Vestas. We can sell the V90s and the V100s. Those are big turbines. But those are all quality companies. They've been around a long time. They're doing well. The other thing you need is a local service crew. That guy up there waving, he is our best wind technician. I'd say I put him against anybody in the country. But he was a tractor technician in our shop in Buckland. I grew up with this kid. And, you know, he got tired of tractors. I said, well, what do you want to do? He says, I'd like to work on wind turbines. I said, are you afraid of heights? You know? And he said, well, not really. I said, okay, let's get you trained. Get him through training. He's excellent. I mean, if you think about it, the 2 things that really work in selling Kansas are wind turbines and hairspray, right? I mean, those are the 2 products you need. You got to be a little inventive here, all right? The installation process, we don't install them, but if they're not certified, they don't install them. So we certify and make sure our manufacturers certify our installation crews because this is pretty dangerous, heavy work. So you really have to have professionals that know what they're doing. Here we have 159 turbines installed, over 5 megawatts. That's a lot of energy from just a little company like ourselves. You can see them. There's Greensburg, New York, Missouri, Illinois, Wisconsin, Montana, Oklahoma. Iowa has a ton of them. The hospital in Greensburg. And we just put up one of our big Vestas, went up in Normal, Illinois at a community college. And this is a local farmer in Greensburg. Roger Stotts, he uses that for irrigation and for his grain dryers that you see right there. All right, and let's just hear what our customers are saying about these for a second to really get a feel. I can tell you all I want, but I think it matters more coming from them. Just a quick video.
Okay, my name is Darren Hedrick. I'm Superintendent of Schools at Kiowa County Schools in Greensburg. And we have a 50 kilowatt endurance tower on the school facility that we use to supplement our electrical demand at the school. I've been very pleased with it from the initial steps as far as the design and then installation. I think everything's been relatively smooth. And anytime you have a self-funded project, one that the money that you put into it, you're going to get a return on it, and not only its value, but more than its value. I think that's always something that makes us interested in integrating it in our school. My understanding, talking to Brad at BTI Wind, we have the #1 producing 50 kilowatt endurance tower in the world. We're very proud of that and very pleased with that. It does supplement the power we need at the school. More than anything, it allows us to save money in utilities. And then that money that we save, reintegrate it back in the school, whether it's in the form of curriculum, or supplies, or technology, or payroll for staff. If we had to do it over again, we'd definitely do it the same way that we did it the first time. And very pleased with what's taking place.
We were destroyed in the tornado in May of '07, and part of the responsibility of rebuilding was to rebuild wise and sustainable. We were given this opportunity because of all the funding that we received from other entities. So as we started looking at our energy requirements, we worked with our architects and our construction people, and we decided that a wind turbine was the best way to go for sustainable energy. We're excited to look out the window and see it going every day. We have the opportunity, since we have in-town service, not to worry about how we were going to manage that machine. That was one of our concerns. It's a kind of a new idea of wind energy in Kansas, at our facility anyway. So we were concerned about how we would maintain that. And because they're in town, we just call them, they call me. You know, we have instant monitoring of the equipment through our computers. So it's been a great asset for our hospital to look at how we can be more sustainable.
Well, I'm Roger Stotts of Greensburg, Kansas. My wife, Leslie, and I and our family operate a farm northwest of Greensburg. The wind generator that we installed in 2010 is a piece of that. We chose to go with a 50 kW endurance generator. We tied it to a grain system that we have, as well as one of our irrigation pivots. And the times that the generator is creating electricity and we're not using it, it just goes back into our grid of our Nitish Real Electric. The installation is great. They did a great job. They're very professional. We looked at this project with great detail because we don't do something unless it makes good economic sense. They projected a 6 to 7 year payoff, and actually with the productivity of the unit right now, the payoff's going to be much quicker than that.
Another turbine that is going up, and you'll see it if you're from Kansas, we just were notified we got the Fort Hays State University deal. So there's going to be 2 Vestas wind turbines going up on I-70, or you'll probably see them off of 70, and those will be ours. So they have about, gets 4 megawatts. I think those are 2 megawatt units. So they'll have a lot of energy pumping to that college. So college is a good project. It's October 30th. Here's an idea for a costume. If you want to get this costume, it's got a wind turbine on his head. I think that's probably as classic as you get. You'll be unique, I can guarantee you that. So with that, we're going to turn it over to the next presenter.
I do want to thank everyone here, especially Diane, Daniel, Catherine. In fact, I've known Daniel and Catherine for quite a few years now, and I know GM has done a lot for Greensburg and has done a lot for rebuilding the town. Dwayne Shank Chevrolet, the dealership there has been rebuilt nicely. In fact, is one of the first dealerships that went through the entire redesign of our facilities and our dealerships. So you see the blue facade and everything, and how we're putting a lot of sustainable efforts into our dealerships. Dwayne's dealership in Greensburg was really one of the first ones that kind of go through that in an impromptu way, in an unfortunate way, but it really kick-started the whole basically remodeling of dealerships and putting sustainability at the front line of our customers, which are the ones that buy our products, but also as an educational thing. So I made this presentation not so much on what GM does as in regards to sustainability, but how we support disaster recovery in communities through some of the sustainable efforts we do in our manufacturing facilities, all the way to our product, and then other facets within GM that help support communities and recovery. Obviously, we've had some facilities. Our Oklahoma City facility, which is no longer, it's part of Tinker Air Force Base, was hit by a tornado in 2002. I manage our third-party utility complex contracts. You can imagine when the powerhouse goes out or is damaged, there's multi-facets of disaster recovery that are no different than what a community goes through to try to get production back up and running. But a few stories for me. I'd like to give you a little history of my going about the world here and some traveling that I've been able to do and some things that I've been able to witness that unfortunately weren't the best of things to go through. But I get to go to Mexico. I've been to China. I've been to Germany. In Mexico, I've been through a flash flood. So you can imagine sitting in a Suburban when you got water sitting on the side that all of a sudden just encompass a vehicle. Makes it a little nerve-wracking when you start seeing cars floating off to the side. However, needless to say, within a mile up the road, we were out of it. I did get to the airport on time. I did take my flight out on time. I was supposed to be in Japan for only an hour and a half for a layover, March 11th last year. As you can imagine, I was at the end of the runway within 30 seconds of taking off, and the earthquake hit. And I thought we blew a tire, but then I looked out the window and the plane wasn't moving. Having never been in an earthquake living in the Midwest, except for little rumblings here and there, that earthquake, trust me, was something that was a very eye-opening experience. And 12 hours later on a plane, we were given the option to get off the plane or stay on the plane and leave for a 14-hour flight. Needless to say, not one person got off that plane. Partially because the pilots were telling us there were no hotels in the area. Transportation was shut down. We had a disaster starting in Fukushima, and I think everybody wanted to get out of there. We were the only plane that took off that day. And we landed in Detroit and had all the news agencies all around wanting to interview, and I ducked out the side and left. Because I looked, smelled, and probably who knows what else after being on a plane for 26 hours straight. Let me tell you, a 4-hour delay, a 3-hour delay, I'll take it over 26 hours on a plane any day. And then just this last year, I was in Mexico again, and we were in a car accident, but made through that one as well. So anybody who wants to travel with me, raise your hand. I'll be happy to take you along. But anyway, I'm GM's Global Manager of Renewable Energy. I have been able to kind of see some of the globe. Really, a lot of this was easy for my parents. I started a lot of this stuff in 2nd grade. Weather and environmental were my areas of focus, and it stayed through that all the way through college. And it's been through my job, starting in the powerhouse industry and wastewater treatment plant industry at GM, working our way up to third-party complex, and then really growing and driving our sustainability portfolio around renewable energy projects, and we've been quite successful at it. And it's been very exciting as well. As kind of an outline of what I want to go through is I'm going to go through our global footprint and sustainability commitments. I'm going to highlight some of our expertise and what we do to share that within our communities that we work in and manufacture our vehicles in, and broadly as we get into some disaster recovery. Energy and carbon reduction goals that we've got within our portfolio, and then our renewable energy goals that we've got from General Motors. More from a broader perspective of how a large corporation like GM can really help drive down the costs of renewable energy and sustainability initiatives, because we do have a global breadth. We have a lot of clout when it comes to working with utilities, with communities, with governments to really drive manufacturing principles into sustainability, but then educating the general public as well. And then some of the other sources that you've got within General Motors, like the GM Foundation and OnStar, that help support disaster recovery efforts as well within the communities, not only where we manufacture, but also where we've got recovery going. This is our global footprint. I know it's an eyesore, but it does show you we stretch across about 130 countries that we do manufacture products and or sell products. So we basically do touch almost every section of the globe but Antarctica. And so with that breadth, we have the ability to understand technologies that are emerging in various sections of the globe and how we can potentially expand that through our R&D perspectives when it comes to vehicles, and or how we can expand it into our sustainable practices going into our manufacturing of vehicles or our facilities. Our commitment obviously is threefold: as vehicles, supply chain, product manufacturing, and how do we drive sustainability into all those areas. Right now, we're now moving into the supply chain. We've done quite well on the product side and the manufacturing side, but the supply chain breaches out. I mean, we've got thousands of suppliers, some of them that are high energy users and very proactive in the communities as well. And how do we share that knowledge as an OEM with our suppliers and vice versa and learn that? And obviously, we're a clean tech patent leader. I mean, we've got a lot of patents in this area of sustainability, not primarily supporting our cars, but how do we take that and look at it from a sustainable portion when it comes to manufacturing practices within our facilities, as well as you look at solar energy improvements technologies, hybrid fuel cell vehicles, and how do you expand that beyond just the vehicle itself, but into the facilities that we manufacture and the communities that we're engaged in. This is kind of our global goals and objectives and the areas that we've really focused on GM going back, decades, starting out with shutdown of equipment. As simple as everybody probably thinks that is, in a manufacturing facility, it isn't as simple as just shutting off the light switch. When you're painting a car, which is the most visible portion of looking at a vehicle, when you walk into a dealership, the mindset is I can't shut this equipment down because I'll never get it restarted back up again. Well, the case is that's not really the case, but you got to work through product and quality issues because you don't want to have to go through repainting of the vehicles time and time again. So educating not only just the communities that we work in, but our employees that work within the facilities that you truly can shut this down. And then going all the way into designing it out as we build new facilities, retrofit facilities, is design in energy efficiency, design in those practices that allow us to automate things and shut down equipment when not in use so that it is more of an automated process. And then driving our renewable energy portfolio, which is primarily where I am focused in right now on our global footprint. I am moved primarily out of our central utility complex contracts, which is good because a day like today I would have been on the phone 99% of the time. And then supporting it in our global leadership as we do have, as I mentioned, a global footprint. This is the top-down support as we've got when it comes to sustainability and our manufacturing practices. In fact, General Motors, as the new GM, just published its corporate sustainability report for 2010 in January. It was rated the top 10 of Fortune 500 companies by Triple Pundit. And in fact, today, it's supposed to be within any day right now. Our 2011 corporate sustainability report should be published, which you can find on gmsustainability.com. So I didn't put a lot of that in there. It is accessible on the internet and the web, but it does come from our top-down support when we look at sustainable manufacturing practices and renewable energy and how it drives down, and it gets down to the triple bottom line, people, planet, and profit. So I mean, it really looks into how do we encompass and all that. Commitments, and I think this gets down to where our dealership level is, and as I've mentioned at Greensburg with some of our other dealerships, we are the first automotive manufacturer that's going to put a Ecologic label on our Chevrolet vehicles. It's only on the Chevrolet brand right now. But basically, not only will you get the MSRP, but you have an Ecologic label that will go on that vehicle that says what sustainable manufacturing practices went into manufacturing it. Whether it's landfill-free, whether it's recycled content, whether it was built with renewable energy as a component of the manufacturing process, that'll all be detailed on this label. It's part of our commitment to show how we're really trying to drive sustainable practices into our manufacturing facilities. And then taking that beyond and sharing it within our communities, because in our corporate sustainability report, we've got at the minimum that each facility has to do an outreach program with the community, whether that's through a college, whether that's through secondary schools, high schools, and whether that's through just having an open house and sharing within the communities and what we're doing and educating them. So it's a real key part of where we've got manufacturing is sharing the successes that we've done and educate the communities that we work in. And then I highlighted some of our other corporate sustainability goals just as a plug. We've got a 20% reduction in energy intensity and then carbon intensity by 2020. And these are all 2020 goals. And then the part that I get is now my full-time job is 125 megawatts by 2020. So that's my focus area, is really to promote the use of 125 megawatts, which includes all facets of renewable energy. In fact, GM was one of the first companies dating back to 1993, even before the EPA landfill methane outreach program. We were putting landfill gas into our boilers and actually burning it as part of the processes to generate steam. So we've gone back to history and then taught a lot. We were one of the early adopters into the EPA landfill methane outreach program to support and educating how you can actually burn landfill gas in a boiler with a retrofit of the burner and still be able to maintain optimal steam production and reliability within the boilers. This gives you an idea. Now I've focused a little bit on renewable energy, and then I'm going to go into kind of the broader scope of what GM can do in a disaster recovery. We've got landfill gas solar. In fact, we've got about 30 megawatts of solar on our facilities right now, with the plan to double that by the end of 2015. So we're a large adopter, really trying to look at our global scale to drive down the cost of solar, which I'll show you here in a couple slides. We've got small hydro and biomass, so really where we can find it, we're trying to utilize it and leverage that as a resource for our manufacturing practices. And it really is to redefine the technology that and the economics of competing with renewable energy. A lot of the folks, as you get into our facilities, really think renewable energy is an expensive way to go, and we're really showing them how we can and leverage the resources we've got and drive down the costs. In fact, the first solar project we did in GM was 1 megawatt in California in 2005, and at the time it was the largest rooftop installation in the US. That came in at a little over $9 a watt, and we're now installing solar on our facilities at a little under $3 a watt. That's in 6 years that we've been able to kind of accomplish those types of scales, supporting large projects that we've got on our facilities. In fact, we used to have the largest rooftop array in Zaragoza, Spain. Was 11.87 megawatts. It's now third, and then our Rüsselsheim, which just got announced, is the fourth. So we got the third and fourth largest rooftop installations in the globe. So we're really trying to support those types. And really, that's the scale that I'll get to, that we're trying to do, is drive down the cost of renewables and make it really to the point where our goal is to get a grid parity that anybody can really do it in any part of the country. And then the technology demonstration, as I mentioned, as we get into some of the technologies and understanding and education of the folks that are engaged in these projects. And as I get out and work with a lot of the communities, spoke with my son's second grade class last year, and I was amazed they were already studying solar. So it's getting down to the educational level of the real younger generations that are in school right now. And they had a lot of good questions, which was amazed. Although a lot of them were around, can I charge my iPod and iPad, which I was amazed in second grade how many of them actually had iPods and iPads, because my son doesn't even have that. But that's their thinking. As they get into the high-tech side of it, how can I charge these gadgets on clean, renewable energy? So it's good to see that type of questions coming out. This gives you an idea of just our global footprint of our 30 megawatts. We just announced in Korea we're doing a 3 megawatt rooftop installation, and we're pushing globally. As I mentioned, our footprint focus regions are where our major manufacturing footprints are, which are kind of the United States, Germany, Brazil, China, Thailand, India. This, obviously the other thing that we get some nice research data. But this is out of Bloomberg to give you kind of a conservative and optimistic approach of where solar is going, in the United States from a PV demand. And it gives you residential, commercial, and utility. And as we're pushing more in the commercial utility side projects, you can see that the residential side is, from a conservative standpoint, is growing. But the utility side is the one that's really starting to take off. There's some large projects that are going forth in Arizona and the desert Southwest. But the real driver on GM's side is driving the economics. And as you can see, as I mentioned earlier, from our first project in Rancho to our current projects, you can see the cost of solar and renewable energy. And this is really, as a whole, all types of renewable energy are coming down significantly, which is a good thing, because as you look at our reinvestment of what we got to do from an infrastructure standpoint in the United States, as we get into smart grid technologies, as I'll get into what GM's doing on the OnStar side, there's a lot of real neat applications you can do charging electric vehicles and understanding what the grid's doing at that time, when it's generating renewable energy that you can charge your vehicle, when is the lowest cost of power to charge your vehicle versus the high cost part of the day. And some of the smart grid technologies that are still some years off, but there are some companies, GM and other ones, that are really working at utilities. PJM's very active in it, some grid operators that are trying to figure out ways to help support and drive sustainable driving practices and how you operate your house into how the grid actually operates. This gives you an idea of just the wholesale cost, average cost for residential and commercial projects, as I mentioned earlier, where they were north of $10, 1998 to 2011. So costs have come down significantly, and I think a lot of folks don't really understand that that actually has happened. They still think of this high price cost for solar and everything, and it really has driven down. Wind powers, I mean, we're doing some PPA, we're looking at sourcing for our Fairfax facility, which is in Kansas, power purchase agreement rates that are coming in at below grid costs. And one thing I've been able to get through General Motors and our corporate leadership is signing on. We don't actually own any of the solar or the wind or the projects we've done. These are all through third-party power purchase agreements that are 10 and 20-year commitments. But that is our commitment to to sustainability, to sign on and understand the risk associated with these long-term contracts, but how it can also drive down our costs for manufacturing. I mean, the wind power costs that we're seeing in Kansas are below grid market by far. I mean, they were coming in like $30 to $40 a megawatt hour, which is, I was shocked when I saw those pricing coming in, which is great because you're below grid power cost at this point. This gives you an idea of 2014, where the economics in solar in the United States are coming. When you look at internal rates of return, there's a lot more states. Had I put a lot more slides, I've got tons and tons of slides on this stuff. But if you look back, just 3 years ago, most of the states in here, you would only probably seen California, New Jersey, maybe Massachusetts, a few of the states on the East Coast, and few in California, primarily on the West Coast, that would actually make it reasonable sense to do solar. But now there's more renewable portfolio standards come into play. As mandates come into play on the states, they are pushing the economics of renewables as a whole more economical for the consumer. to purchase these types of systems for their homes, or actually source through some of the green power ability you've got with the utilities. For our standpoint, it's good because our heavy manufacturing presence is in the Midwest, so it's good to see the states in the Midwest coming on board. And we'll have some projects that we're announcing here in Ohio not too long. I'm going to get into more of the broader perspective of how GM and corporations as a whole, though, can really help in disaster recovery. Obviously, GM Foundation, Ford, a lot of the automotive large corporations do have foundations that not only give during times of need, whether it's homeless and helping that, but also in disaster recovery. This one highlights what GM did and what Ford was doing. I'm saying kind of as a whole from an automotive OEM, what we can do from a large corporation standpoint when it comes to supporting. This was for Joplin and a lot of the support that the foundations have done. So there is the nonprofit philanthropy side, I can't talk, but a philanthropy side for corporations to support this and really get into the communities to help support, where maybe the corporate side, there's some tax implications that we can't do, but the foundation can get in and jump in right away and support that as the corporation jumps in with other avenues to support. So the GM Foundation is very active in the middle of a lot of this and has been for many years and will continue to do that. OnStar. OnStar, obviously, I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with OnStar, and trust me, it works, because I'll tell you another story. I do have a company car, but I did total a company car when I broadsided I wanted to say pickup truck to my wife, but a dump truck, and I totaled it. It was a big Cadillac. So I can say this, the OnStar system worked, the safety systems all worked, and I just remember the airbag deflating and seeing on the dash, airbag deploy, parking, lights flashing, engine disengaged, and then someone talking to me, and I couldn't figure out who it was. I just wanted to call my wife, and I was trying to fiddle out my cell phone, and they said, well, we can call your wife. I said, well, oh, okay, well, that sounds good. They said, well, do you know her number? And it took me a second, but I did, and my wife works at a hospital, so you can kind of imagine, she works in the radiation therapist department, which treats cancer patients, but they couldn't figure out why OnStar was calling them until someone picked up, and I said, well, don't worry, I'm okay, I hit a pickup truck. So, long story short, I said, how I'm going to get home? But the nice cop said, I'll put you in the back of my car, which hopefully the only time I'm ever in the back of a cop car. And he said, I'll take you home. And I said, sure, but my wife, being the fact the hospital is 2 miles away, everybody gave her a hard time for not picking me up, so she was driving by as I was taken away in a cop car back to my house. And I got in, and she says, honey, you didn't hit a pickup truck. That was a dump truck. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So I looked at the pictures later. Yeah, it was a dump truck. And needless to say, I got razzed at work from a lot of people who can't figure out how in the world did I miss such a big truck that was right in front of me. But needless to say, the one that gave me the most razzing realized a few days later how close dump trucks can jump out. They are faster than you think. So OnStar does work, but so that's my story on OnStar. But on the Red Cross and GM OnStar, we do open up our OnStar applications. It's free of charge at that point when there's disasters so that you can get a hold of your families and communities, and vice versa. You can get out to get emergency support. So that's one way that we're utilizing, leveraging resources that are built into our vehicles to do that. This kind of gives you an idea of what you can do. You can contract, emergency responders. You can get a hold of or get a hold of relatives. You can share information with the shelters and the American Red Cross. You can basically inform the appropriate public safety officials where you are, if you need support or help, or if you need an emergency assistance further. And it can pinpoint exactly where you are. So from GPS, they'll know exactly where you are, even if you can't figure out where your home was or where you actually are if you were driving down the road at the time. So there are ways that there are information on vehicles, and a lot of the vehicles are getting into this, not just General Motors, but other OEMs as well, to kind of look at these types of technologies and emergency response, and they're great systems to have when you need them. The other one that kind of gets into, as I mentioned earlier, on the smart grid type of technologies, and as you look at redeveloping communities, and I think what Greensburg's done a lot of, but as you look at disaster recovery and response, and this is the Pekin Street project. I don't know how many of you have heard of this, but it is basically down in Austin, Texas. It's the old Austin airport that was basically torn down when the new one was rebuilt, and they're building a home community of about 500 homes. All going to be wired smart grid technology. All going to be, there's about 1,000 volts, I think ultimately 500 volts roughly in that area. They've got smart technology in on their appliances. They're doing testing and working with Austin Energy, and they're kind of a micro scale, but on a grand scale of how the grid actually operates in an area where you've got a high volume or a high density of electric vehicles, and how do you maintain grid functionality if all 500 of those volts decide to charge at the same time, and understanding what impact that has on the utility versus a lot of these homes also have renewable energy, solar on the rooftops, wind turbine. I don't know if they got as many wind turbines. I do know that SunEdison's engaged in. There's solar going on the rooftops. So it's kind of the future of what sustainability looks like as you redevelop communities that may have been destroyed or damaged by natural disasters, and how you can build this into it. And this will be a kind of a reporting mechanism to kind of understand electric vehicles and their impact onto the grid as well. You may hear a lot of the stories from the utilities is there's a lot of concern that if everybody buys an electric vehicle, there's going to be a strain on the grid. When in actuality, if you look at how the adoption of electric vehicles is, the grid's going to be well more built up before the electric vehicles become really what I would consider the mainstream type of technology out there. And when you really look at what all the automotive manufacturers are doing, it's not just electric vehicles, it's high mileage hybrid vehicles. Fuel cells still out there in an area that's getting, I think, a lot more interest again than it was. It kind of tailored off, and it's getting a lot of that hump over what people think of the hydrogen. And I always hear it, the Hindenburg, well, that was 70 years ago, different. Hydrogen can be done. It's just a matter of how you get to it. And then, standard just internal combustion engines and the mileage increases you're going to get off of that. So I just wanted to kind of highlight, this is OnStar working with the Pekin Street folks down in Austin on that for future sustainability. And then this is, everybody's got iPhones or they've got their iPads. You can literally go on there, and this is the EcoHub app that's being developed for the Pekin Street project that has the ability to be able to check what the average cost of power was, what kilowatt hours for your home was, how much of that went to actually charging your vehicle on that daily basis or weekly basis. But it's a neat little application right now that's only for the Volt, but the intent is to roll that out to other electric vehicles, and potentially there's some other applications that are going to be rolled out through the Chevy MyLink and other MyLink systems, and the other automotive manufacturers are doing the same thing when it comes to apps. But this is an app that you can actually use with the electric vehicles to monitor your consumption and work with the grid to make sure that you're charging at the lowest cost time of the day and or the time of the day when it's most amount of renewable energy. And I know internally we're looking at how we can take leverage all of our renewable energy projects that we've got and figure out a way to put an app in that charges our electric vehicle fleet only when we're generating renewable energy from our facilities. So there's some interesting opportunities as we look at it internally as well with our facilities. So in summary, I really wanted to kind of get back around how large corporations can really lend support in the areas of disaster recovery and disaster response. And I think our expertise, we do have a lot of expertise in the communities that we've supported rebuilding. Greensburg was one of them. Colleague Kristen Zimmerman was out there several times in that. She was highly engaged in our public policy carbon area of General Motors. Scale and leveraging of resources. We're a big company. We have to, we're insourcing a lot of our IT stuff now. So we've got huge systems that are being put in place as backup, as any large corporation was, because if a manufacturing facility is hit with a major disaster, we have to have the ability to support the systems going forward, or we have the ability to knock off several plants at any given time, especially if it's a transmission plant or an engine plant that's making product from multiple facilities. In case we do have a facility in Baltimore, I know they went through all the necessary functions and sandbagging that they did to protect that. Utility context, we have large, presence, especially in the Midwest, but really where any load of our facilities are, manufacturing footprint, our typical production facilities use about 20 to 30 megawatts, so we're a pretty sizable load in the utilities, and we have the ability to work with utilities and leverage some of the resources that we've got internally as well. R&D, as I mentioned earlier, some of the R&D aspects that we're looking at how we're building our product and improving our product, but also moving that into our sustainability side of our manufacturing, and then ultimately to the consumers through outreach. And then nonprofit integration that we've done with the GM Foundation and other ways to really leverage those resources as a large company as well. And I believe that is it.
Could you speak to any of the renewable energy efforts that might be going on in that plant expansion and then moving into the existing plant?
I can say that we are looking at all of our facilities for renewable energy. I can't say, we haven't publicly announced anything for Wentzville. I do know that we are seriously looking at that, obviously in support of the state renewable portfolio standard and a state governor that's very supportive in the renewable energy front. So all facilities we are looking at, in the U.S. for expansion of renewable energy, and obviously we will be looking seriously at Wentzville as well.
You bet. Fort Wayne, Indiana, the Silverado plant, I guess it's net zero now, I'm understanding. Is that correct?
No, Fort Wayne is landfill free, so no waste goes to a landfill. That's what you probably heard on that. It isn't net zero. From an energy perspective, it is not. We do generate landfill gas there. About 20% of the energy at that facility is generated from landfill gas.
And how many landfill-free facilities in North America?
Globally, we have over 100. Facilities that are landfill free.
I got you.
Kelly, appreciated your comments about the recovery process, and I believe you and your brother were the co-chairs of the Chamber of Commerce Business Recovery Committee. We heard yesterday that there's a lot of processes, a lot of stages in planning recovery, and obviously on the business side that happened too. You might share some, of your experiences of, best practices, what worked, what didn't work, and, what your thoughts were in that business recovery effort.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It was very daunting because, as you can imagine, there's been a lot of tornadoes, but not too many of them take an entire town like the Greensburg situation. And so one of the big problems, and it was mentioned yesterday, and I just want to reiterate it, is communication. Getting a hold of business people after such a disaster is extremely difficult, and I'm sure Joplin had the same problem. How do you get a hold of these people, most of whom have lost everything they owned? And so not only are they thinking about recovering their business, which, keep in mind, a business person is not making money unless his doors are open. So the longer those doors stay shut, the less chance they have of ever opening again. So our concern was getting those businesses back up on their feet. So really one of the things that was done, Chuck, was all of us got together and tried to develop interim business plans. I showed you our dealership that we rebuilt. I didn't show you our temporary facility that we put up in a couple months. We rebuilt a shop that had been destroyed and put all of our parts and service in there while we looked around for a site to build a new store. So we were operational in a couple months, but all of Greensburg, and I think you've heard from our Greensburg residents, they had to have portable generators. We had no power, we had no water, we had no sewer, so we put in a septic tank in town. They gave us some special dispensation to do that. We brought in portable tanks. So you needed to get people established. A lot of businesses, or some of them, went to other small towns around and we said, go do your business, open a door somewhere, do it in a trailer. We brought in some portable trailer houses. And we had some help doing that through, I believe, the state, or was that, doing that. So we had some trailers that people could relocate in while they decided where to build, because you had to decide where you're going to go back. Are you going back where you were? We did not. Where you see that hospital in our slides, that was our facility. That was where we were. That's not our facility, it's where we were. The fire department did buy our shed, and that became the fire station in Greensburg, our temporary facility. But we moved on the edge of town and put up the facility that you saw. So people have a lot of decisions, as was mentioned yesterday, to make in a hurry, and you've got to do them all at once. You can't plan too long. If you plan too long, you've probably planned for failure. You've got to plan while you're working, and it's a daunting task, as Steve Hewitt said. It's very grueling. I had open heart surgery that same year in late '07. So just be prepared for the stress levels, because they're going to come on you pretty hard. But it doesn't always lead to that, thank God, you know. But so not everybody in Greensburg had that problem, but it is an issue. So just keep that in mind. But it was great to have those meetings. We had them for about 18 months, and everybody, all the business people, the community leaders, Gene West, the commissioners, they showed up. The mayor, they showed up, and we discussed what are we going to do. This man right here had a lot to do with that, Daniel Wallach. Emphasizing the green build, and the sustainability really kicked into high gear. Not everybody is going to buy into it. You know, it sounds like it's a good deal to us. We all believe in it, but not everybody does. So you're going to have some tasks to convince the rest of the public that this is a good thing, because some of them don't see it that way.
And just to follow up, anything you might have done, because you know, I was at those meetings, our staff was there, you know, you all did a great job. But just looking back, would there have been anything else you'd have done differently?
Probably from the meeting standpoint and what we were doing there, probably not. I think it was done as well as it could be done. From our rebuilding standpoint, definitely. You know, we made some mistakes. We started building probably too quick, like was mentioned yesterday. And by the time we got our plans done and started, we hadn't turned dirt, thankfully, but then that's when we decided to build LEED, because before we were just going to put up a shop and go. But then we said, you know, the city's doing this, let's step back, rethink this. And when you try to plan a LEED building after you've already designed it, that is not what you want to do. You know, you want to design it with those things in mind, because when you're backtracking, you're spending a lot more money than you needed to spend, because you could have built all those features in very easily before. Now it's a little more difficult. So, but it worked. We got it done. And there were some mistakes, like I said, in the building. Contractors and subcontractors, my gosh, if there's any in here, I apologize, but it's terrible dealing with people that sometimes, and in Greensburg it was twice as bad, because everybody that came to town didn't understand what we were doing. The contractors, almost none, had LEED experience. We had to go to Kansas City to find people that knew what that was. And that's why BNIM became involved, because locals didn't have a clue. I didn't know what it was. You know, what's LEED? That just didn't even make, that acronym didn't make any sense. But then, obviously, we learned, so.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, this another quick question for Michael. I know Greensburg is windy, and not because you're there, but
that's something to do with it.
And you have some large megawatt wind turbine systems that you showed. Does BPI, your company, get with the network, not just in Greensburg, but around? You showed the national map. Get into any small, for individual businesses, vertical access machines?
Yeah, definitely. The ones in Greensburg really are powering businesses. The Best Western in town, the 50s are really well suited to most businesses, because they're small enough to be accepted within a community. Not everybody's going to have them, because building codes won't even allow you to put them up. You know, they're too tall. But where you can put them up, they work very well in a business, on a farm. The larger ones that we sell, the Esteses and the Gamesas particularly, those are big, and those are generally suited for a university or a large installation, probably. And I might even try to sell this guy a few turbines before he leaves town. You know, I was going to get his business card before he leaves. But those turbines are excellent for larger businesses. And I will point out that all those companies that you saw, the four that you saw, Endurance, Northern, Gamesa, and Estes, they don't have people like us all over the place. They generally only want to be involved in wind farms, the big ones, Estes and Gamesa. They like wind farms. And we had to basically go in and present a business plan to them that made sense, that they could accept. And if we couldn't take care of what we sold and put them in the right location, because if you put these in the wrong spot, it's a bad deal. So you've got to get them sited right, you've got to have the right wind, you've got to have everything right. And we have the staff, we've hired the staff that knows this and trained them so they know how to do it. But we do have small ones. With those, we have those little 5s that are still available. That's a 5 kilowatt. That'll power an average size home. So we do sell those, and we don't sell them as often as, because they're a little harder to justify on the price side. They're still fairly expensive, but for a homeowner. But we have some out there. There's some farmers that have put some up and are powering their farms and their dairies, dairy barns and stuff like that. So.
Any other question? There's a question there.
Go ahead. I just first wanted to say, Rob, I'm kind of saddened and disappointed that your third grade son still doesn't have an iPad or an iPod.
Yeah, it took me a while to move up to that age as well.
And I just want to point out, Mike and the Estes family were really, truly heroes in Greensburg. They wielded a lot of power, and what they chose to do or not do had a huge impact on the green initiative and the community coming back as a whole. And what really impressed me today was hearing Mike say, yeah, the money was a nice byproduct, the savings and all, but what was most important was the community. And I just think that's leadership of a business that isn't really common, and it's really important. But the question I have for both of you guys is a business that has just lost everything and has their clean slate, and they want to integrate alternative energy into their powering system. What would your advice be?
We do actually, we've got what I call a green construction standard that we've now pulled together at GM that takes a look at not only just new facilities, but as we overhaul existing facilities, because you can imagine when we gut a manufacturing plant for a new product, it's about a $500 million process sometimes, up to a $500 million. And so part of that, the green construction standard is if it's new build, we take a look at renewable energy and alternative energy and the third-party suppliers that are in that area, because typically we don't look at that as our capital cost, and we don't really want to own the systems, but we do want to benefit from the long-term, savings that we'll get off the electricity generated from these. So we'll integrate typically a third party into the construction process, because if you are building new, it is typically cheaper than going back in. As you said, retrofitting after the fact becomes a little more expensive, and not to mention you're probably in the middle of startup in a production facility or in production, so it becomes an impact potentially to production. On existing construction rebuild, we do look at how do we recycle content back in with our facilities. We do a lot of the concrete gets basically recycled back to asphalt/concrete for our footprint in those locations, and what other applications we can do from recycling the steel. We just built a new data centers. We look at in-housing our data centers from external to internal at our Warren Tech Center, and all the dirt and everything that went out there. We're building a wildlife habitat, what used to be the old test track facility there that is no longer used, which was a crumbling nightmare. So that is becoming kind of it's going to serve twofold, a wildlife habitat, but a wellness center for our employees that can go and take walks and everything else. So it kind of promotes more of a moving lifestyle and getting out in the environment and seeing how things are being done. So that's part of the application as we look at reusing not only existing facilities, but building new.
Yeah, I would say they would need to look at the climate that they're in, the environment that they're in, and the type of business that they're in to determine what kind of renewable you're going to use. For instance, our type of business, farm equipment dealership, and actually Ron Shank's Chevy's the same way, the in-floor heating made tremendous sense. And so we have in-floor heating in our shops, and Ron has in-floor heating in his Chevy dealership. So what one difference is, we're a farm equipment dealer. We deal with a lot of oil residues, which, LEED had a hard time. The Green Building Council didn't understand tractors and combines. We deal in dirt. We are dirt, okay? We are oil and grease and grime. You have to figure out a way to deal with that. So we educated the Green Building Council a little bit. But one of the things we did do is we burn waste oil. So we capture the oil out of our tractors or combines or sprayers. We pull it over within the shop on a cart. We hook it up to a quick coupler, and we pump it out into a 1,000-gallon tank outside. In the winter, we burn that. It heats the water that runs through the coils that heats the floor. So that's a sustainable thing that's real easy to do for a farm equipment dealer, not so easy for other people. The daylighting makes sense to a lot of businesses. That is easy to incorporate with solar tubes. I think Rob made a good point. Technology has kind of caught up with a lot of these products. There was a day I would have never put a kind of a panel up on my roof for love nor money, because you got to cut a hole in your roof, which could be a leak. Well, the bay insulated skylights that we put in the shop are raised, they're domed, they're very durable. We get pretty big hailstones, so you got to have something pretty durable in Kansas, and they have not leaked. I've had leaks other places, but I didn't have leaks where I put those. So you're always going to have a problem somewhere. But I would say consider your environment and consider the business that you're in, and you'll probably get some good tech. Well, you will. There's some really good technologies out there that you can utilize. Oh, well, I thought I covered that. But no, wind makes a lot of sense in, once again, the environment you're in, where you are. There's some, Greensburg passed an ordinance so that people could put wind turbines up in town, all right? They have a 100-foot limitation on that turbine and a fall zone. So you have to have quite a bit of property around you so it can't fall on your neighbor's property or block a street. So if you consider the hospital is all on their property, the Best Western is all on his property, and he bought additional lots to put that wind turbine in, by the way. And the school sets out pretty much by itself out by the football field. So you can put wind turbines, but a citizen in Greensburg, if he didn't have all those things, he wouldn't put one up. A farmer, no problem, as long as he's got the wind resource. So, and you look at the power cost. If that power cost is high, a wind turbine can make sense. If it's low, you may not want to go there, you know, so you kind of look at all those factors.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Rob, and thanks so much. It was a great session. Thank you.